All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live cooking demonstration. Bear with me just a moment as I get our camera set up, and then we will go ahead and get started. All right, so good afternoon again. My name is Ryan Smith. I am the Wellness Program Administrator here at Georgia State University's Employee Development and Wellness Services. By trade, I am a registered dietitian, so my job is to tackle all things in the field of nutrition. And today we're going to be making a fun recipe with a healthy spin on it. Before we get started, we are making use of the WebEx chat feature today. So during the presentation, if you've got any issues, questions, or comments, please use that chat box feature and make sure to send your message to all panelists. I'm joined today by my colleague, Cheryl Johnson-Ransaw, who will be monitoring the chat to assist with any issues that may arise. Again, if you've got questions or comments related to the recipes, please share those in the chat, and we'll be sure to review them at the end of today's presentation. We are going to be recording today's demonstration so that you can view it at a later time or share it with a colleague who may not have been able to attend today. We upload most of our recordings to our EDWS YouTube page, where we have past cooking demonstrations, guided meditation, yoga, and more. So we encourage you to check that out, and we'll be sure to share a link to that website after today's presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we are going to be making pasta primavera. So pasta primavera is an Italian-inspired dish. It's not actually from Italy. It originated in America when we were kind of emulating different Italian foods. Traditionally, it's a pasta dish with a very rich, creamy sauce. And primavera means spring. So it incorporates a lot of spring-related vegetables. We're not quite in spring yet, but we're close enough, and I was in the mood for a pasta dish. So I thought we could take this recipe, make it a lot healthier, and make it work for us as a nice meal prep recipe. To get started in terms of equipment, we're going to need a basic cutting board. We're going to be using the stovetop. You'll need a large pot as well as a large skillet or pan to cook things in. Now I've gone ahead and started boiling water for the pasta we'll be making today, just to save us a little bit of time as we run through things in our limited 30-minute window. So I've got a large pot of boiling water. There are 4 quarts or 1 gallon of water in there at the moment. And the pasta we're going to be using today is whole grain spaghetti. Now you can really use any pasta shape you'd like for this. We're going to make use of 8 ounces, which is half of one of these 16-ounce boxes, or about half a pound of pasta. You can use a food scale to measure it out. You can also just open a 16-ounce box and kind of eyeball where that halfway point would be. I'll leave that up to you. It's not going to make or break the recipe either way. But we are going to be using whole grain pasta, and the reason for that is whole grains are going to give us some nutritional benefits. We're going to get a little bit of extra protein in it, which is always a nice plus. And then we're going to get a lot more fiber. We'll talk about fiber throughout today's recipe, especially as it appears in our vegetables, so I'll cover more on that later. But know that the main benefits are additional protein, fiber, plus some extra B vitamins. So we'll get started with our 8 ounces of pasta. I'm just going to split these spaghetti noodles in half to make them a little easier to work with whenever we go to eat it. And I'm going to add that to the boiling water over here. Okay, and then you'll just cook that according to your package directions. My particular box recommends about 7 minutes, so I'll be keeping an eye on the time there just so we can come back to that and pull it when we're ready. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to start cooking some carrots in olive oil. Carrots are the first vegetable we're going to be adding to this dish to really bring out the nutrition in it. I'd recommend getting a large carrot or about 2 medium carrots and cutting it either into thin strips, or if you are comfortable doing the matchstick style cut, that's going to be great as well. We basically just want the carrot pieces to be thin enough that they're able to soften and cook through. Carrots take a little longer to cook than our summer squashes that we'll be working with. So we're going to give them a little bit of extra time and attention. So in my large skillet, I'm going to add half a tablespoon of olive oil. You can also use another healthy cooking oil of your choice. And we'll put that over a medium-high heat. So again, half a tablespoon of oil to get us started. All right. So, like I said, this was mainly a time-saving exercise to go ahead and chop this up. But in terms of nutrition, carrots are great for us. We're going to be getting fiber, and this is a great opportunity to chat a little bit about it. Fiber is very helpful for our body. For one thing, it helps keep us regular. So as things are moving through our body, we want it to flow through the system, and fiber is really helpful for that. Fiber can help give us better blood sugar control after eating a meal. It can help us maintain a healthy cholesterol level, and it contributes to feelings of fullness and satiety. So we can feel satisfied on less food, which is great for maintaining a healthy weight. So we've got our oil heating up. We're going to go ahead and add these carrots to the pan now. And I'm sort of just swirling the pan around, getting the carrots in an even strip so that they all have an equal opportunity to cook evenly. So over that medium-high heat, we'll give that about 5 minutes, and we're going to start preparing our summer vegetables now. So this is just a yellow squash. It is a summer squash, and this is a zucchini, which is also a summer squash. What we're going to do is we're going to cut off the ends here at the top of the neck, just getting rid of that stiff part. And then we're just going to make some medium-sized slices, cutting it into little circles as we go. And you can really choose the thickness of this. I'm trying not to make it too thick. We are going to cut them additionally after this. But the reason for that is the thinner they are, the faster they'll cook. But we don't want them to be too thin or they may burn. So I'm kind of aiming for just a nice middle ground here and going down and chopping. So a summer squash compared to a winter squash, there are some key differences. They're both very nutritious. We're getting fiber and a lot of other healthy vitamins and minerals. But when it comes to a summer squash, they tend to be higher in water content and much lower in carbohydrates and calories. So something like a yellow squash or a zucchini is fairly low in calories, a lot of water, a lot of vitamins and minerals, where a winter squash or like a butternut squash, for example, tend to have those in the fall and the winter. They're higher in carbohydrates, higher in starch and calories. Again, both are healthy options for different reasons, but we're going with the lower calorie summer squash for this recipe. So when you've got your circles that you've cut, they're going to be all different sizes as you move down the shape of the vegetable, of course. We're just going to cut those into halves now, and that will just give us a little bit more surface area when we go to cook these. If you are comparing some of your bigger pieces to the smaller pieces, you may wish to quarter the pieces at the very end of the squash just to make them a little more even in size. The goal behind that is things at a different size will cook at slightly different rates. So we want them to be as even as we can. You don't have to be super particular about it, but just something to keep in mind as you work through the recipe. Okay, so we've got those chopped up. We'll go ahead and repeat the same process with our zucchini here. Now, I am kind of keeping an eye on the pasta behind me, just being aware of the time. When you're at home making this recipe, I do recommend setting a timer just in case you lose track of time. It's always a good practice. We've got about 5 more minutes on that pasta here, though. So I'm going to do the same process, cutting through the zucchini. Again, doing those medium thickness cuts, and then we'll cut them in half to give them a better opportunity to be able to cook. The carrots that we're cooking behind me, we're going for a total of about 5 minutes on those, just giving them the opportunity to soften up, maybe brown a little bit, but we don't want to overcook them. And now we're going to cut down and cut those into halves as well. One of the nice things I like about working with the yellow squash and then the zucchini is we get those bright different pops of color. We've got some greens going in, some yellows going in. Both of these squashes are an excellent source of vitamin C, which is good for our immune system. So we know we're doing well for our body when we incorporate these into the pasta dish. So I'm going to turn my attention to the carrots. I'm going to give them just a little bit of a stir so they can cook on other sides as well. And again, our goal is to try to keep all these vegetables when we're cooking in a nice even layer so that they can cook evenly. If things are stacked on top of each other, they won't get the same amount of heat, and we want every bite to be just as delicious as the last. So we are going to set these over to the side just for now, and we can start prepping our tomatoes next. So the next vegetable we'll be featuring in this recipe, I'm going to use grape tomatoes, or you can use cherry tomatoes. If you prefer, you can also buy other varieties of tomatoes and cut those up. I tend to enjoy the cherry or the grape tomatoes just because they're a nice size. We're going to cut them in half just to make them a little easier to dig into when we're enjoying the recipe. So we're getting close on the pasta, just another minute or two there, keeping an eye on that. So let's talk about the tomatoes a little bit. Now this process, I haven't really found a super fast way to do this as we cut these in half. Just go one at a time, no rush. Tomatoes are incredibly nutritious. I think I've actually featured them in the last 2 recipes we've done on our cooking demonstrations. They are a good source of a number of different vitamins, including vitamin C. But the favorite thing that I like to talk about with them is lycopene. Lycopene is an antioxidant, which means that it has some cancer prevention properties. It's great for whenever our bodies are just living life and going through what they do. Over time, damage can occur. And antioxidants helps our body combat that damage and repair things. So that's why it's got that preventative health benefit. And lycopene is one of those. So it's great to incorporate tomatoes into your diet, whether it's salads, sandwiches, pasta like we're doing today. So I'm always looking for a good way to pull those in. So we'll just continue cutting these. We're about ready to pull the pasta, so I'm probably going to go do that in just a minute here. I want to make sure that we drain it and don't overcook it. And we're also going to pull the carrots around the same time because it's been about 5 minutes. So we'll pause with the tomatoes here and go take care of those. I've got a plate next to the carrots here. What I'm going to do is just scoop the carrots onto the plate for now. We're cooking each vegetable separately. We'll sort of move them to a dish, and then we'll pull them all back in at the end. So we've got our carrots there. You may see some of them are lightly brown. That's a good indication that you've cooked them for about the right amount of time. Again, we're trying not to overcook them. We don't want them to be burned because we will pull them back in with the heat at the end of the recipe. Now for the pasta, go ahead and get a colander. I'm going to set this in the sink. And we're just going to drain the pasta for now. Be careful with that water. It's, of course, very, very hot since it's in boiling. So as you carry it over to the sink, just be cautious. Make sure that you're taking all the safety precautions necessary. Okay, so we've got our pasta sitting in the colander there. What we're going to do is we are going to use the same skillet. We're going to add another half of a tablespoon of oil to it, and we'll begin cooking our zucchini and summer squash. All right, so we are still maintaining that medium high heat there. I am going to actually just scoop some of these tomatoes into this bowl so that I can take the cutting board over to the stove and just scoop the zucchini and yellow squash into it. So medium high heat with that half a teaspoon of additional oil. We're gonna spread these out on the skillet and try to put them into an even layer again, just like with the carrots. Our goal is to cook each side for about 2 to 3 minutes till it becomes lightly browned, and then we'll flip them. All right, so you can see how they're not all in an even layer. I'm going to use a spatula, or it may be good to use tongs just to move them around. If you've got any pieces like this guy here is stuck together just because it's a little moist, go ahead and separate those so that they can cook. Okay, so we've got that in a nice layer. We're going to give it about 2 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and flip to the other side. In the meantime, we can continue getting our cherry tomatoes ready, and then we can start talking about the cream sauce that we're going to do today and the modifications we've made to keep it a little bit healthier for us. So just finishing up these last couple tomato pieces. So with this sauce, traditionally in a pasta primavera, when you're making that cream sauce, it is a very, very rich, very, very heavy sauce. And our goal with making this dish a little more nutritious, we are increasing the amount of vegetables. So we're upping the vitamins and minerals, upping the fiber, and we're going to decrease the intensity of the sauce a little bit. we still want to have a lot of richness. So we are going to be using whole milk, for example. We're going to be using Parmesan cheese, and we are going to be using butter. The idea behind the recipe today is that when we're talking about healthy diets, no foods are off limits. Our goal is to enjoy things in moderation. So we can still make a rich cream sauce, but we can dial back the total amounts of ingredients going into it and make sure that we're still balancing things to be nutritious overall. So we'll use a smaller quantity of these ingredients, but still have that delicious, cheesy, creamy taste all over the pasta and vegetables. So I'm hearing those sizzling. We're getting really close there. So again, our sauce is going to consist of whole milk, half a cup. We're going to do half a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. Now, you can buy Parmesan cheese and grate it yourself. I would recommend, if you want to buy it pre-grated, make sure you buy the refrigerated grated cheese. If you buy the shelf-stable powder stuff, it's just not quite as good. You can use that if you happen to have it on hand, but I think you're going to get a better flavor out of buying something like this. We're going to use 3 tablespoons of butter. We're going to have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 teaspoon of dried basil. So let's go ahead and flip that zucchini now. You can use a spatula or tongs. We're just going to flip it over to cook the other side. I'm going to show you all a piece here. Hopefully you can see this. See how it's got those little light brown marks on it, getting that golden brown? That's how we know that side's been cooked well. So I'm going to toss this back in. So flattening that back out into a single layer, we'll give it about another 2 to 3 minutes to cook that side. And then we will add all of our ingredients together to make our cream sauce. So what we'll do is we'll transfer the zucchini over to the plate with the carrots. Make sure you've got a big enough plate or bowl to hold all those vegetables safely. And then in the same skillet, we're going to mix in our sauce ingredients. The butter will melt down and it'll start to bubble. We'll add in the cheese and all the different seasonings, and then we'll whisk that together until it forms a nice consistency. Afterwards, we'll add in our tomatoes, give them a chance to warm up, and then we're going to add the vegetables and pasta back into that main dish so that we can cook it all together and really mix those flavors around. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the zucchini now. It's been about those other 2 minutes, so we can go ahead and move them to the plate. And I'm going to drop our heat down to a low heat for when we cook our cream sauce. All right, I'm actually going to give it, I'm looking at the bottom side of one of those. I'm going to give it just another minute. We want the zucchini and the yellow squash to be properly cooked through. They're a little stiff and rigid to bite into if you haven't cooked it all the way. So I want to make sure that they're soft, and fork tender is a good way to test it. If you've got a fork and want to stab into it, make sure that there's not a lot of resistance when that happens. So giving it just a couple more seconds, and then we will go ahead and move it over. I will mention one more ingredient. I do have some crushed red pepper flakes here today. This is an optional ingredient. So if you're not a big fan of spicy, you can definitely leave this out. We're just going to sprinkle this on the end of the dish just to add a little bit more flavor. I like to do this on pastas and pizzas. You know, that's a typical combination. But if you're not feeling the spice, you can definitely leave that out. So let's go ahead and move the zucchini now. And I'll actually move the skillet over here just so I can show you what we're doing a little bit better. Let's go ahead and get our butter ready. So we're using 3 tablespoons today. You can use the information on the packaging of the butter to do that. Typically what you'll do if you're separating it, you can just cut into it through this piece of paper here and keep up with the measurements. For what we're doing today, I'm really just going to try to cut this into about 6 to 8 small slices so we can spread it out on the skillet. So I'm just going to go through like this and get those small pieces, and that will make it melt a little faster, and we can go ahead and add it to there. So again, we're making use of a total of 3 tablespoons. So I'm leaving off the last tablespoon of butter because I had 4 left in that stick. We're going to take this, it's already a little hot, so you can see the butter moving around, and we're going to heat it over that low heat. And our goal is for that to start bubbling a little bit. Once it starts bubbling, we can go ahead and add in our next ingredients. I mentioned we're going to be using whole milk today. So richer and higher in fat, but we are making a cream sauce. So we want to keep some of that fat in there. I'll share the nutrition information with everybody when I share the recipe today, but we are really watching the total amount of saturated fat is the main thing we're keeping an eye on. Typically, a cream sauce, things that are really rich, are very high in saturated fat, which we want to keep a little bit lower for our overall heart health. So by reducing the quantity of some of the things like the butter and the Parmesan cheese compared to a traditional one, we're really helping with that. For comparison, a normal cream sauce might have as many as 6 tablespoons of butter in it, and we're only working with 3 today and using olive oil in other places to help with that. Little changes like that can make a big difference. So let's go ahead and add in our 1/2 cup of milk. All right. And then we're going to do 1/2 cup of the grated Parmesan cheese as well. And because I don't want to add it to that wet cup because I'm a little worried about it sticking, let me grab another measuring cup here. So again, 1/2 cup of the grated Parmesan cheese. We'll go ahead and add that. And then I'm going to dump in our teaspoon of dried basil, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, and then 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then we're going to whisk that around until the sauce is incorporated. So keeping it at that low heat, just go ahead and whisk it for a bit. And our goal is for the dried Parmesan to really mix in with the milk and melted butter so that it's not too grainy. We want it to be a pretty smooth sauce. So give it enough time to heat up and mix in until you get an even consistency across it. And just because I know the camera's over there, I'll try to give you a better view of what we're looking at. We've got the sauce mixing around here. You can see this skillet's pretty big, so there's a lot of room for it. The idea behind that is when we add all the vegetables and pasta back in, we want to make sure there's enough room. So I'm going to continue to whisk this for just a bit. And now let's go ahead and add in our cherry tomatoes. We're going to give them an opportunity to heat up a little bit inside of that sauce, pick up some of that flavor. And then I'm just going to mix the tomatoes around. And if there's one thing I will say about this recipe, the smell of the sauce is so good. Having the heated butter with the garlic and the Parmesan cheese in there, it smells absolutely delicious. I made a sample batch of this, of course, earlier this week, and it's very, very good. Really, really enjoyed it. I know it's been a little chilly outside lately, so having some warm food like that is excellent. So we've got that, the tomatoes. We're going to give them just a couple seconds to kind of heat up in there. And then what we're going to do is take our pasta that we've strained and add it back into the sauce and add our vegetables back into and give it all a little bit of an opportunity to heat up together. And we'll add our veggies. And what I'm really doing here is just stirring the pasta around to pick up that sauce. I'd come over there and show you on the camera, but I want to keep it on the heat for now so the pasta can continue to get warm. Ideally, when you do this recipe, we want to try to time the finishing of the pasta with when the sauce is ready so we can put them in while it's warm. It's okay if it doesn't work out perfectly, but I'm going to give it some time to warm up on the stove because of that. All right, so to show you what we're working with now, you can see all these vegetables coming together over here. The pasta's starting to pick up some of that cream sauce. I'm going to stir it around a little bit more, and then we'll plate some to show you. All right, so hopefully you can get a good look at that, seeing that steam coming off of there. It smells so good. So what we've done here is we've taken a traditional pasta dish that's incredibly rich, really heavy, high in saturated fat, high in sodium, and may just be a little unbalanced when it comes to the total nutrition. By adding in more vegetables, by using a whole wheat pasta, by reducing the quantity and the intensity of the sauce, we've really made this shine. So we're still enjoying those flavors, but we know we're doing well by our body too. I'm going to turn the heat off on the stove now. And I'm going to leave it on there just so things can continue to warm up. But this is our completed dish minus, like I mentioned, I like to add a little bit of red pepper flakes to the top to give it some more flavor. In terms of storage, you can keep this in the fridge in an airtight container for up to 4 days. It will hold up pretty well. Definitely recommend reheating it. I love cold pasta, but I think this really shines whenever it is heated up. In terms of nutrition, this will make about 4 total servings, and each serving will have about 400 calories. Whenever I give people recommendations for aiming for a calorie amount for a meal for weight maintenance, it's dependent on your activity level, your height, your weight, different things like that. But usually in the 400 to 600 calorie ballpark is a safe place to aim for a meal. So at 400 calories, we're at a nice place here. You could certainly pair it with maybe like a fresh side salad if you wanted to bring in even more vegetables. Or maybe you wanted to have like a piece of fruit to finish it off as sort of a sweet touch at the end. So that's entirely up to you. But the base serving of this is 400 calories. It's got about 15 grams of protein. Our protein is primarily coming from the whole wheat pasta, our Parmesan cheese, and the milk that we added to the sauce. So those are the main contributors of the protein. Overall, a serving has 9 grams of fiber, which is excellent. That's about a third of your daily fiber recommendation. The whole grain pasta contributes, but our real stars are going to be the zucchini, the yellow squash, and those tomatoes, along with the carrots coming in to add the fiber. I mentioned the vitamin C content is very high because of the summer squashes, and we've got some vitamin A and some antioxidants as well from the carrots and the tomatoes. So overall, a really, really solid dish. The one thing that I will note when you take a look at the nutrition label we send out, the saturated fat is a little higher than we'd have in most of the recipes we feature on this program. One serving of this will have about 40% of your daily saturated fat. That's about 8 grams of saturated fat. Now, that does not mean that this dish is unhealthy by any means. There's a lot of good nutrition going into it. And one of the things we do when we make a healthy diet is we talk about moderation. As I mentioned earlier, we can enjoy all foods in moderate amounts. So by having the reduced quantities of this, pairing it with all these nice vegetables, this can absolutely fit into your healthy lifestyle and a day of healthy meals. So we'll send a follow-up email that'll include a recipe with all the instructions of everything we did today. It'll include the nutrition information on there as well. Additionally, that email is going to contain a link to the recording if you want to view it again or share it with a colleague. And then there'll be a short survey where you can let us know what you thought of today's session. We love to hear feedback and are always looking for ways to improve. Keeping an eye on the time here. I know we did run a little over. I am going to take a look at the comments because I did see we had a couple here. Let's see. Okay, I have a comment about, can you use a lactose-free milk? So in terms of milk, the recipe, I got this recipe from a place called The Modern Proper. It's a food blog that has a lot of recipes. They tend to be pretty rich and a little indulgent in terms of some of the ingredients. So I took the recipe from there and modified it to make it healthier. On that website, I saw several commenters actually discussing milk substitutes, including using lactose-free milk, as well as using almond milk or soy milk. Whole milk is going to add a certain richness to this because of the fat content of it. You can use other types of milk. Just be aware that if they have a reduced fat content, it is going to change the sauce a little bit. But we also put 3 tablespoons of butter in it, so I wouldn't be too worried. I think overall, you're still going to be able to get a nice sauce. It may just be a little bit less creamy if you use a milk substitute. All right. I see a question about, would vegan butter make any difference? So really, when we use the butter, our goal is to, again, add creaminess to the sauce. If you have a vegan butter substitute, a lot of those may have coconut oil, or they may be based on another fat like that. It's going to add a similar rich creaminess to it. I would recommend using a type of butter, though, as opposed to just using oil for the sauce. I think it's going to mix together in a very different way that's going to be nice compared to what would happen if you just use the oil. But to answer your question, yes, a vegan butter substitute will work. So if you're looking to make this more plant-based friendly, I know we're working with Parmesan cheese, whole milk, and regular butter. You could certainly do a milk substitute. You could do a vegan butter. Parmesan cheese is a tough one to replace. You can work with nutritional yeast. If you're a vegan, you might be familiar with that. It's got a cheesy flavor to it. It's not quite going to produce the same effect. I think the sauce is going to be pretty significantly altered, but I think you could make a decent substitute using that if you wanted to try to make this recipe vegan. I see some comments about the recipe looking good. Glad to hear it. Like I said, I enjoyed it earlier this week when I practiced it, and it is very, very good. I'm a big fan of Italian or Italian-inspired dishes. The other comment I will make, today we use zucchini, we use the yellow squash. Really, with a pasta primavera, you can work in almost any vegetable. I've seen people do asparagus. I've seen people do broccoli. It's kind of up to you. Just make sure that you follow the instructions like I did. We'll kind of cook each vegetable separately in a little bit of oil. Once they're cooked, we can move them to a plate, and then we'll add them back in at the end to mix with the pasta and the sauce. The goal there is, in case you're using vegetables that might cook at different rates, we can make sure they all get cooked properly, and then we'll pull them back in at the end to pick up that flavor and unify the dish. All right, and I don't think I see any additional questions or comments. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending today. This is definitely a great recipe and another good example of, if you've got a favorite type of food that you might consider unhealthy, we can always work to make little substitutions here and there that add up to make a dish healthier. This is really balanced in terms of the food groups. We've got whole grains, we've got a mix of different vegetables, we've got protein and dairy coming into it. So a really nice balanced meal that I'm excited to share with all of you. So keep an eye out for that email so that you can see that follow-up information. I'll also mention we do cooking demonstrations like this twice a month, and our office also offers a number of other activities from our guided meditation and our yoga to our snack and share support group and more. So if you're not already on our mailing list, you can email us at edws@gsu.edu. We'll get you added, and you can stay up to date on all of our upcoming programs. And we'll be sure to put that in the chat as well for anyone who might want to sign up for that. So with that being said, have a great rest of your day and keep an eye out for that email. Thank you.